Hey guys, this is Willie. I did my research presentation on past and present Native American culture in Vermont. I mainly focused on the Abenaki tribe because they had the greatest population and range in Vermont, and they also lived in Addison County, what is now Addison County, and that's where I live. And so it's cool to kind of get some more research into that. Um, because I'd heard about them when I was younger and learned about them when I was in elementary school, and so it's cool to kind of come back and learn a little bit more. Um, I'm going to talk about just some facts about them and how they lived, um, and then some stuff about their value system, and then also some stuff about what's facing their culture today, what kind of issues they're facing today. So, first, the Abenaki lived in Vermont. They also live in Canada. Um, but they chose to live near pretty fertile land, like near rivers and lakes, because the way that they sustained themselves was mostly from growing corn and squash and crops in general. They also hunted and fished, but they mainly grew crops. They hunted and fished with bows and arrows, and they fished with spears. And they hunted with spears as well. But they traded crops with other Indian tribes that were in the area. They also fought with Indian tribes that were in the area, namely the Iroquois tribe of New York. They frequently fought. Um, they lived in what are called wigwams, which are dome-shaped huts that are covered with hide and birch bark. They also lived in what are called longhouses, and they're made out of the same material, sticks and hide, and they're just bigger and more suited for community meetings and rituals and gatherings and fire so that they could stay warm during the winter. Another structural piece that the Abenaki were revered for was their canoe building abilities. They would make birch bark or birch tree canoes by hollowing out birch trees with coals from fire over periods of days. And then once the tree became a log that was buoyant, they would carve it into a shape that would balance and work, which is really impressive for the lack of machines that the Abenaki had. Men would wear breechcloths and leggings, and women would wear deerskin shirts to stay warm and stay clothed. Dogs were a large part of their culture because before the European settlers came over, there were no horses or anything. So dogs were used as pack animals by the Abenaki and also as part of their families. So that's kind of some stuff about just how they lived on a day-to-day basis. As far as their value system goes, a lot of their values are taught through stories and Abenaki mythology that's passed down orally through generations. And there were two stories that I would kind of like to summarize briefly and share that I thought were interesting. The first one is the story of Abenaki creation, and this is the story about how the Great Spirit, who is their kind of higher power, one day looked around in a time not known to us and saw nothing, saw and heard nothing and felt nothing and tasted nothing. And so he decided to fill the space with light and life. And so he ordered Tolba, the great turtle, to rise from the sea and to become the land. And after Tolba did this, the Great Spirit sat down and thought, and he thought long and hard about what he wanted to put on the land. And he wanted it to be perfect. He wanted the world to be perfect. And he thought so long that he ended up falling asleep. And when he fell asleep, he dreamed. And he dreamed about these weird creatures with 4 legs and that flew and that had scales and that slithered, etc., etc. And then when he woke up, he found out that what he had dreamed about had actually become reality. And at first the Great Spirit was frustrated and angry because the world was not perfect and it's not what he wanted. But then he saw a beaver building a dam, and he realized that the dam would house the beaver family, but also create an ecosystem for other species like fish and birds in the area. And the Great Spirit decided that his creation was imperfectly perfect and that everything just kind of works its way out in a way. And it teaches the Abenaki not to question their dreams at all because their dreams are their creation. The other story that I thought was really interesting was the story of maple syrup. And I think just because maple syrup is a pretty important part of Vermont culture as it is. Um, but the story of maple syrup is that once upon a time, maple syrup was you could just break a stick in half, a maple stick in half, and drink maple syrup out of the stick. It was just ready to go in the tree. Um, and one day, the Great Spirit had Gluscabee, the demigod, come down to check on the Abenaki. And he went to go find the Abenaki and found that their village was deserted. And he was looking for them, and then he soon realized that they were on their backs in a maple grove. And the Abenaki had become fat and lazy, and they didn't want to get up and work for anything because they were just breaking off sticks from the maple tree and eating maple syrup and being gluttonous. And in order to punish them, Gluscabee decided to make it so that the sap from the maple tree was not sweet like that. And he made it so that they had to work for the syrup, so that they had to boil it. And he also made it so that they could only get the syrup one time a year, which we know is the spring. Um, and this is kind of just a lesson in moderation, and which is something another thing that the Abenaki are known for. They're known for being temperate and docile as a tribe. And yeah, this is a lesson in moderation and working for things. And I thought that was a pretty cool story. And then the last thing I'll talk about is things that are happening with the Abenaki today. And a big issue for them is that they aren't federally recognized as a tribe of the United States. And this is an issue for them because it's just it kind of sucks to not be taken seriously like that and recognized. Not that they're not taken seriously, but like to be officially recognized. But also, it kind of hurts their economy and maybe the way that their culture can continue to survive through time. There was an act passed in 1990 called the Indian Craft Act, and it states that it was illegal to sell crafts and clothing. Well, first, I'll say why they aren't federally recognized. Excuse me. They aren't. When the settlers came over from Europe, the Abenaki would tend to hide, or they would migrate to Canada, which is where a lot of their population is in the Quebec area. So there's not, like, though they were here, definitely, there's not a lot of physical evidence that proves that they were in the area, and so they can't get like all the funding and stuff that other tribes, like the Iroquois, get, because there's a lot of physical evidence that the Iroquois were present in the United States. But the Indian Craft Act states that it is illegal to sell crafts and clothing that would lead a customer to believe that the crafts were created by Native Americans. And this is a problem because if the Abenaki were to try to create Native American crafts, they couldn't sell them because they aren't federally recognized as a tribe. So even though technically they are crafts created by Native Americans, legally they're not, and they can't do it. And so that can kind of hurt like a possible like economy, economic value, but also just past like maintaining their culture through time, because there's not a lot of incentive to continue to make that stuff. Like obviously for like family and just for fun, yeah, but I don't know. The Abenaki have been recognized by Vermont in 2011. The state of Vermont did officially recognize 2 Abenaki tribes, but there's still another 2 tribes that aren't recognized, and so that's still an issue for them. But yeah, I hope you guys learned something from my presentation. Yeah, thank you.